Chapter Pente. Animation. In the emptiness of this cosmos, the figure lay in the shadow of a strangely black and barren tree. KLEIO wondered how the shadow came to be without the incidence of light. Then she noticed that it grew out of him, just like the tree. Both sprouted from the figure that lay beneath it. This oddball. In his strangeness, he nevertheless seemed strangely familiar to her. Human, while he took the form of an ancient philosopher. A sculpture of Plato or Aristotle in flesh and blood, or whatever he was made of, as if the statue had come to life, or KLEIO had travelled back through time to the place where his makeup identified him as a scholar. A white stole concealed what, with little imagination, was a hint of nothing. A long grey mane, as well as a ruffled beard, adorned the character's head, which remained free only between high cheeks and forehead. That it was by no means a human being was evident from its shimmering purplish skin, the glistening crimson eyes, the dog's tail at the lower end of the body, bushy like that of a golden retriever. It was wagging. Intuitively, KLEIO took it as an indication that he was somehow happy to see her, despite his grumpy manner. Suppose it behaved similarly to his tail-wagging cousins. The fact she liked dogs made him no less suspicious. She did not quite know whether she should be trusting or if there were good reasons to be afraid. Perhaps she was also becoming somewhat jaded by the constant redefinition of what she thought was possible. Considering how surreal everything was behaving, it became inexplicable why this reality seemed more real than her old one. The pearly plain beneath her feet, every step, right up to the tree and the strange creature that made itself comfortable underneath.
Who are you?
She wanted to know with 1,000 other questions on her lips.
Can you step out of the sun for us first?
He did not think of attaching more importance to her than to his well-being. KLEIO stepped aside uncertainly, looked around in the milky sky for a sun, finding none, though he was content with that.
Far more, the question arises, who you are. After all, it is you who are disturbing us. What are you doing here?
I am clearly losing my mind,
she replied, which pleased him. Examining her, he looked her up and down.
You have certainly lost something, though not much of it, and also gained something. It looks like you've been tampered with. That's not the way it should be with you.
That's how this woman put it. She said I was damaged or something.
That's right. Your metaphysical body is damaged,
he confirmed with certainty. Without revealing what on earth it meant, he was concerned with another part of her statement.
A woman, you say. Pretty?
Quite.
KLEIO admitted.
As much as I can tell, I was, and obviously am still rather confused. She had the aura of a wizened old woman and white hair. But apart from that, she looked very young,
she recalled.
Then it was really them. Fascinating,
he replied, impressed.
Did they come to you? Or did you seek them out like us?
KLEIO didn't understand how that could be distinguished.
I did not seek out anyone at all, but neither does it seem that you sought me out. Do you know her?
Hecate.
The name rang out like a hymn.
Dumnomania. Dumnodamia. Dumasandra. Guardian of your spheres. Hylico, Pneuma, and Necrosphere.
She told me to try to stay here.
Here?
He asked doubtfully, running his right hand through his beard. It didn't seem like human hair, but more like flax.
No. Where I was until recently,
she confessed uncertainly.
Then you didn't really manage to do what she asked you to do, did you?
A cynical question on his part that needed no answer.
So, I'm dead then?
KLEIO wanted to know.
Is this the afterlife?
In her view, the brilliant vastness of the surroundings spoke for it. A thesis he immediately dismantled.
What you call the afterlife can take many forms. This is not one of them.
And what is this then?
She inquired. Put on the rack.
Didn't we just say Pneumasphere? It's not our fault that you've never heard of it. What was your name again?
KLEIO.
She replied shyly.
KLEIO.EXE.
KLEIO. Like the muse. Interesting.
He noted, did credit to the appearance of a Greek philosopher, omitting, on the other hand, what his name was.
Do you want to tell me your name?
She asked, and he replied slyly.
Call us Friedrich.
Up to this point, KLEIO assumed he was speaking of himself, in the third person, which she found strange from the get-go. But that's how it had to be. In some circles it was customary. Apart from him, she saw no one lying under the strange tree. Besides, there was nothing visible far and wide except for her, sheer monotony. She wondered if he was referring to the tree, but she certainly never stood in its sun, no matter where it came from. Just at that moment, the mystery cleared up in a way that caught KLEIO completely unprepared. The loose neckline of his stole moved, and a little man slipped out. KLEIO shrieked with fright and drew back from this unforeseen appearance. It wasn't so much that little Thumbling looked grotesque as that he looked identical to the Socratic with a dog's tail, only in miniature.
My pleasure.
He beeped in a similar but higher-pitched voice. The pitch was proportionate to their difference in size.
You were under there the whole time?
Asked KLEIO, trying hard to keep her cool.
Yup. Been asleep. The muttering of that hobo there woke me up.
He pointed his tiny index finger to the tall Friedrich. He was unmoved by the insult. Immediately it occurred to her that little Friedrich was carrying around a smaller one too, like the insane epitome of a matryoshka.
Okay.
She recollected her situation.
Now, please explain to me what this place is, and what is happening to me. Avoid cryptic explanations.
Nothing mattered more to her right now. She was curious to see which of the two Friedrichs would speak out, if one of them would be able to communicate something that she could understand, and that would help her.
Say something, you amateur Immanuel Kant.
The little Friedrich demanded of the big one, which sounded more vulgar than it should have, and instead of snubbing his short copy as before, he was persuaded.
You know many names for what you go through. Soul flight, or astral projection. With these concepts, you make yourselves understand what is far more complex. You like to make it simple for yourselves.
The tall one explained. The little one added.
And he deliberately makes it more complicated than it has to be.
Whereupon he caught a disparaging look from the tall one.
So, I'm not dead?
Echoed KLEIO, more confused than ever.
It doesn't work that way.
Came back gruffly.
You are here, aren't you? Whether you see yourselves from somewhere else or not, whether you stand outside or inside of yourselves, it's the same. You're here. The perspective does not play a role. If you were dead, you would now fight your way through the necrosphere. For you, beyond or the underworld. We, however, are in the Pneumasphere, a non-place at the existential edge of your dimension, the hylocosphere, and the higher dimensions. Exactly in between, the worlds of multi-dimensional existences and yours.
Someone's getting redundant.
The little guy sneered in a melodic interjection. It left the big one cold, and he continued unperturbed. In his speech, which was probably intended as an explanation,
The singularities of all probabilities are concentrated here at one point. In the universe of endless potential, in which everything is always and everywhere, and everything is infinite and one. Time and space, as you know them, exist differently, and not, you can choose. A cosmos of inexhaustible matter moves simultaneously with maximum speed, so that it dissolves in it, like a vacuum of unfathomable emptiness remains in eternal rigidity. The Cora of uncreated creation.
KLEIO had trouble following his words, but
A vacuum? Then, how is it possible, for example, that I breathe?
she wanted to know. Had paid attention well enough in physics class, which had no authority here.
Do you believe that you breathe?
Came as a counter-question, which she answered with a hesitant nod in the affirmative. She was demonstrably not running out of breath.
As long as you keep the unshakable faith, nothing will change.
He provided little to no explanation to the phenomenon.
It is your metaphysical organs that keep you alive in this sphere. It is likewise they that generate your pneuma.
A certain eagerness made itself felt in the latter, which sparked KLEIO's curiosity,
What, please, is Pneuma?
and his eagerness flared crimson in his eyes.
To our kind, a treasure, the fulfillment of all our desires.
He opened the next monologue expansively.
All the beams of your spheres pour it out. It comes in different varieties influenced by your inner and outer state, your mind as well as your attitude of mind. Some among us prefer order, and others chaos.
Your kind?
We creatures of the higher and lower spheres often mingle with your kind. Ours does not produce pneuma and does not have access to the source,
He said regretfully, noting,
From your pneuma, we see confusion. The color changes.
In case you haven't noticed, he's outrageously keen on your pneuma.
the little dryly clarified the big one's cravings, and KLEIO backed away a bit, not knowing where. It was unmistakable that he was after it. Something she didn't even know was there. Neither saw it, smelled it, heard it, nor perceived it in any other way. Then she remembered the hallucination in the spree park, when she had seen the people shining like human torches. That's what he had to talk about.
Realization is looming in your pneuma.
He remarked, seeming to see something that remained hidden from her. She inspected her arms and confessed.
I don't see anything.
You can't see your pneuma?
He asked, puzzled.
I can't see anything floating away from me at all.
Strange.
Thoughtfully, he stroked his flaxen ruffled beard again.
That means that you are not completely here, which is already a miracle in your condition. We can see that you have a hole where clearly too much of it is leaking out.
And what can I do about it?
She wanted to know.
Is there anything you guys can do to help me?
There's not very much you can do about it, but whatever it is, you should do it soon.
He seemed to think.
Maybe there are some who can help you.
The way you put it, I'm running out of time.
Time is causality. It occurs as soon as realities collide. What you perceive as time is what the mind tells your ego to make sense of it. You experience it with your senses, even though it is beyond them. In truth, it is rather as if our ideas collide. They exist independently of time and place. Everything is always and everywhere.
If that is so, am I practically talking to myself? Or is there such a thing as my mind?
Both Friedrichs liked this thought. KLEIO also wondered if they were helping themselves to her pneuma unnoticed.
Your mind. Our mind. It makes just as little difference. Everything is always and everywhere. Everything is infinite and one. In this dimension, facticity and transcendence are one and the same.
This statement exceeded her understanding of French existentialism.
Then what is real, and what is not?
What is real?
Was his counter-question.
All is as real as you make it. Your subjective reality is composed of what you choose to believe and emerges from an intersubjective tangle. Where there is order, there is hierarchy. The earth of those who think it is flat may be flat until their reality collides with others, submits to the dominant vibration, and takes on its frequency.
Which doesn't mean we're flat earthers.
Little Friedrich verified.
For us, your world is rather hyperbolic.
Big Friedrich picked up where he left off.
And just because you have influence over your reality does not preclude the existence of things that exist outside and beyond you. You are constantly coupled to other energies, external, and to those that emerge from your collective. The critical mass within the hylicosphere always has the strongest influence on your perception. But, ultimately, everything is true and nothing. Different opinions are part of the order, for all who think exactly as you do are you. You decide whether you know everything or not. Whether it is wise is decided for you. For you, it is as wise as you are willing to believe. Although you all come from the same source, each component of this collective is creating its own reality and experiencing it from its own perspective. Your consistency proves itself only when it meets others. Reality is not so much what you imagine it to be, but how you imagine it to be. Seen in this way, no ultimate truth exists in your reality. Only the fantasy of it that takes shape collectively in your minds.
KLEIO was clearly overwhelmed. You didn't need to be able to see Pneuma for that.
I don't know what to say to all of this. Thank you. Kind of. And do you have anything more helpful?
We're afraid we can't help you. Some others might be able to. One piece of advice we can give you. If you get lost again, direct your thoughts to things that are familiar to you, and that make you feel good. Cultivate your breath, KLEIO. Stoke the flame and burn through worlds. Even if it seems that chaos led you here, do not despair. The path to enlightenment is a highly individual one for everyone. Gates are always open to those who choose to pass through them. The stories of the great heroes and demigods are rarely about those who were born extraordinarily, but come from the sagas of great people who chose to be extraordinary.
This all just sounds so unbelievable. How do I know you're not just lying to me?
Healthy skepticism is always good. It helps us not to succumb to too many delusions in life. Too much of it is self-destructive. We should not let ourselves be guided in our thinking by doubt, but by faith in possibilities. There is a fine line between doubting everything and believing everything is possible.
I consider it absolutely possible that I have gone mad.
And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music.
Didn't Nietzsche say that?
Remarked KLEIO, who in her teens had gone through a period in which she devoured all works, from the all-too-human to Zarathustra. Never would she have claimed that she actually understood his writings. He shrugged his shoulders.
Quite possibly. Depending on where we're going in what you call time, we may have said it before they did. Accordingly, either way, some Friedrich said it. So why do you care who else said it besides us?
It's all so incredibly surreal.
She held her forehead and shook her actually non-existent, and yet somehow existent, head.
Everything is as real as you make it. In this place, you simply have more influence over what forms that reality takes. Those of you who know how to bend the laws to your will become gods.
Does that mean I am immortal now?
She wanted to know. And they both burst out laughing, barely able to contain themselves. Was the idea that ridiculous?
No, you're still pretty far from it.
The tall one admitted, still amused, wiping a tear from his eye.
But I got shot,
She protested.
Yes, that is indeed most strange. And it is related to your problem. Actually, it should be different for you guys. We wouldn't do it again if we were you. You will only get more broken.
As if she was shot willingly. Until recently, KLEIO would have sworn that it was only possible to break once. Abruptly and without it happening consciously, she moved away from the Friedrichs suddenly from her. Neither, and both. The space made room between them.
Hey, where are you going?
The tall Friedrich demanded to know.
Stay here. Otherwise, I'll have to deal with that buffoon again,
Added the tiny one, regretfully. Both disappeared from her perspective.
I have no control whatsoever over what happens here.
She tried to tell them. But no one in this empty cosmos heard KLEIO anymore, except for the witnesses of her thoughts. Her body, or whatever its spiritual counterpart might have been called, was dissolving into an all-round tunnel vision. Once again, it was as if space moved around her mind. Disembodied, weightless, clueless, and completely uncontrollable.